Did you know transitioning can change your pain tolerance? Not only that, it does so differently for trans men and trans women. I want to tell you all about that, plus 5 other mind-blowing changes that you'll go through that you've likely never heard of, including changes in the brain itself. Hormones play a direct role on how your body perceives pain. A study done on individuals following the influxes of testosterone showed a correlation between pain perception at the time of high testosterone. The higher the testosterone, the lower the pain perception, aka the higher the pain tolerance. Even more interestingly is there was a study done on specifically transgender individuals that yielded the same results. That specific study showed that trans women felt more pain after treatment and trans men felt less pain after treatment. And if that idea gives you gender euphoria, I think there's a lot of good reason for that. It's just kind of nice knowing your body changes at such a deep level to represent your experienced gender. To move on to the second change that you've likely never heard of, I need to ask you a question. Have you ever stolen your significant other's sweater? It's okay, you don't have to lie. I'm not gonna tell them. It's a safe environment. Let me guess, you like their smell, don't you?
Oh God, it's so good.
Not the perfume or the cologne, but their body odor. Don't be ashamed, I get it.
So good.
Well, what if one day you stole another one of their sweaters and you realize that they smell different? If your partner is transgender, this is a very real possibility. Transitioning does have an effect on how someone smells in the end. Estrogen dominance leads to a milder and less pungent sweat odor, whereas testosterone dominance leads to a stronger and muskier sweat. There's a few reasons why this happens, one being men having more oily skin than women, and also the way they affect your apocrine glands, which is basically sweat with like proteins and stuff. Yeah, kind of important for smell. Basically all this means is trans men usually need to find like a new deodorant.
How are you? Fantastic.
That's not all the time, and trans women, it doesn't mean you can't shower, okay? I figured that one out myself. Number 3, pickles. Am I right? You already know what I'm talking about. A lot of transgender individuals report to have different taste preferences during transition, but there's very little research to go off of. What we do know is spironolactone, a very commonly used testosterone blocker for trans women individuals, has a direct effect on salt intake, thus being the main culprit behind the pickle cravings you've likely heard about. But that doesn't necessarily explain taste preferences changing as a whole.
Where's the lamb sauce?
Because there's so little research done on transgender individuals regarding taste preferences specifically, I had to look outside just a little bit. And what I found was actually very interesting. One study showed that higher testosterone led to a higher preference of spicy foods specifically. And given we commonly see taste preferences change alongside hormonal fluctuation in men and women, it could be argued a new hormonal baseline could have the same effect. Again, more study needs to be done on this topic to come to a conclusion on whether or not this is actually the case. What we do know is there's a lot of testimonies online about people experiencing this through their transition. And if your taste preferences have changed, let me know in the comments. I can use you as a guinea pig. Number 4 is temperature regulation. At some point in your life, you may have realized that women tend to be a bit more susceptible to cold? Susceptible to the cold. And most people would assume it's because of size difference, mass difference, or because of breast tissue being involved. And of course, there are some truths behind that. One thing that changes for trans men and trans women is fat distribution, not dissipation, that's my bad, as well as skin texture. Also muscle mass, I should probably add that, very important. But what also plays a role that you may not have expected is hormones themselves. Estradiol, which is a type of estrogen, tends to promote heat dissipation from the body, which naturally makes women a bit more susceptible to the cold. Did I say susceptible? There's a joke there, but this isn't the video for that. Now, testosterone is a different story. It doesn't directly affect your temperature. In fact, it indirectly does so by changing your metabolism and your muscle mass. Number 5, we're going to talk about sexual preference. It's incredibly important to note that sexual orientation comes from a lot of things: genetic, hormonal, neurobiological, psychological, and social factors. And due to the complex nature of sexual orientation, even research that has been done is still not definitive on whether or not hormones play a direct role on sexual orientation. What we do know is over the course of transition, there are several studies that show many trans women and trans men change sexuality during that time. My entire life, I've always dated very masculine individuals. I preferred women that had wide shoulders, etc. However, in the 3 to 6 month mark of my transition, I realized that my eyes started gravitating towards men specifically, honestly, specifically back muscles. I was really into that. Alright, moving on to number 6, which is objectively the most interesting point in this entire video. We're going to be talking about the direct changes on the brain itself. And the reason why I find this very interesting is because think of your brain like a computer. When using a computer, you have a level of autonomy over what you can do and what you can see. Just like as an individual, you have a conscious effort as to what you can think and what you can do. But when it comes to changes in the underlying coding, things can change drastically, sometimes without you even noticing. And what can happen in transitioning is the way that you perceive information and digest emotions can be vastly different. But because you experience these changes in real time, you only ever notice them if you look at them in hindsight. So I want to talk about the transgender brain in great detail. A study on trans women found that our brains are much more feminine than cisgendered men, but not quite the exact same as a cisgendered woman. What this means is cis men and cis women have slight variation in the way that the brain's constructed. However, trans individuals, even before hormone treatment, has somewhere in between. What is incredible about this and why it should be way more broadly known is because it's a biological reasoning for why people may experience gender dysphoria. And in a world where people are so quick to say facts don't care about feelings, they sure are quick to forget a lot of very important facts. It's worth mentioning the makeup of the brain is only one of many factors that play a role into gender diversity. And in some cases, people who do experience dysphoria may not have a quote-unquote transgender brain as it's been put in the article. And because I can see you developing brain dysphoria, don't worry, you're still valid either way. This chart here is a summarization of measurements within the brain. In a very simplified manner, specific cortexes and regions of the male and female brain vary. And within those variations, somewhere in between, transgender women in the study sat. What's even more incredible is during estrogen therapy, there is a decrease in brain volume in certain regions associated with the assigned gender at birth. This doesn't mean that by the end you'll be an entirely different person, it just means that the way you perceive information can vary slightly. But with this in mind, it's no wonder why HRT can change someone's mood at such a fundamental level. It's also incredibly interesting to consider exactly how this makes us perceive, experience, and the world around us. Some trans individuals, me included, say their pre-transition self feels familiar, but all the same like a different person. Kind of like a different life. Could this be because of massive changes in the environment and experience? That's usually the case, but I can't help but wonder if these changes in the brain are in part why we feel that way. I wonder if that's why it feels so jarringly different, thinking back and looking at me as almost a different person back then. I wonder if you feel the same way, or if you will feel the same way. In summary, something I'm deeply interested in is the unintended, unknown changes that just happen whether we want them to or not. The natural transformations not just our body go through, but how we transform as people. And of course, the effects these play in our baseline day-to-day happiness. It's easy to discount who you are and how you feel based on where you're at in life. Earlier in transition, it's hard not to do this. But remember, there's so much more to you than what you see in the mirror, and you shouldn't base your validity off of comparisons to others. Over time, things get easier and you get comfortable. But no matter where you are, be it on HRT or not, know that you are valid and you matter. Every point I made in this video has references below if you want to research for yourself. I truly think there is a deep empowerment knowing these subtle and unique changes that your body goes through in a way to make us all feel just a bit more valid. If I earned it, please sacrifice a like and subscribe to the algorithm gods to support my content. And a huge sloppy thank you to all my YouTube and Patreon members for making this possible. Okay, bye!